exclusive industry broadcast here live from the CDP headquarters and our offices in Austin, Texas. As we sit here entering 2013, we now can truly say that we are through a lot of the housing crisis. A lot of us have had tremendous challenges through the last few years, and challenges of a scope that we never truly expected. The foreclosure numbers have been record numbers reported year after year. Millions of people have been in jeopardy of or have lost their homes. It has truly been an epic struggle financially and for our country, and hopefully we're through the worst of it. In any epic struggle, in any challenge that our countries face, true professionals emerge, and I have the privilege of having one of those true professionals with me today. Lori Maggiano has worked with the Treasury since 2008, and she has gone above and beyond to not only help homeowners, but, important to all of you watching, to make sure that real estate agents were represented and seen as the advocates that they can be for their clients, and truly, absolutely written into policy so that you can work with your clients, get them to a peaceful resolution to a financial crisis. It is my privilege to introduce you all to Lori Maggiano. Lori, thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for that very glowing introduction.
Well, you know what, Lori, I think that in the challenges that we've seen over the past few years, it really has been tremendous, and you know, you've done a ton, and you haven't always been recognized for it, but you've never stopped battling, not even for one day.
Well, I go to sleep every night, actually, thinking that really it's about homeowners, and it's not about policy, and it's not about the government, and it's not about Fannie and Freddie. It's really about homeowners, and so that's what motivates us and keeps us moving at the Treasury.
Well, later on I want to go into your background, because you actually started in life like many of our viewers today. Part of your professional career was?
I did. I was a licensed real estate broker for many years in Scottsdale, Arizona, and that has been incredibly valuable to me as we've rolled out short sale programs.
No doubt, no doubt. And we can tell by the types of programs you've rolled out that you have that in mind. Also, you can tell by the way that the programs have been structured that the agent has truly been in mind. Let's jump into these changes. Let's get to what a lot of people have come for. We are going to experience another, almost a complete overhaul of HAFA, February 1, 2013, right?
That's correct.
So let's go ahead and first, anybody who's watching this broadcast at any time, if you have a question, email it to questions@cdpenow.com, questions@cdpenow.com, or call with a live question. We'll get you patched through to Lori and I at 512-870-8468. Let's get into this new supplemental directive. This is 12.7. So Lori, let's take a look at it. We'll start with just some of the changes. So before February 1st, servicers were required to use all of these forms: the short sale agreement, the request for approval of short sale, the alternative request for approval of short sale, and the deed in lieu agreement. We have made some substantial simplifications here, right?
We have.
So here's the new requirements. The documents after February 1st are just simple: the short sale notice and the acknowledgement of request for short sale. So tell us a little bit about why we did this, Lori.
You know, when we first conceived HAFA in 2009, our objectives were really twofold. Number one, we wanted to increase the number of short sales that were taking place by streamlining the process and by putting in some time frames. And then the other thing is we wanted to protect borrowers. At that time, borrowers were still being asked almost always for contributions in order to do a short sale, and they sometimes were also getting deficiency judgments at the end of the short sale.
Yeah.
And it was not at all uncommon to have a foreclosure take place right in the middle of a short sale transaction.
Sure.
So we wanted to provide some assistance for those borrowers. We came out with a program that perhaps in true government fashion was a little over-engineered.
You mean the original HAFA?
The original HAFA.
I think you got a call from us within about 4 or 5 days.
I think so, yeah, probably. I do remember that. But we came out with a program that really had a huge amount of input from the real estate community.
No doubt.
So we didn't do this in a vacuum. We took a lot of advice from the real estate community. And we came out with a program that I think set some really fine standards.
Sure.
But over time, we got a lot of feedback. We took that feedback very seriously, and we continued to refine the program and try to simplify it as we went along.
Now, Laura, you say over time, but let's just point out, so the original HAFA was released. We had feedback. A lot of organizations had feedback. You know, you were very gracious in listening to all the feedback we got from CDP members. And that original change to the original program was done in lightning speed for government.
Well, for government, yes.
Right?
For government, true. So we rolled out the original guidance in September of 2009. In the spring of 2010, we had some supplemental guidance.
Turned around and changed it.
And we've had a couple changes since then.
Sure.
The problem we found was that when we came out with the original guidance, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and Treasury were exactly on the same page. And as we made changes, the GSEs adopted some of the changes, but not all of the changes, and different GSEs had different approaches to short sale.
Well, Freddie did some things, Fannie did some things, and it got to the point where if you were a real estate agent and you were trying to do a HAFA short sale or traditional short sale or a Freddie HAFA or a Freddie traditional, Fannie HAFA, Fannie traditional, there were so many rules it was almost impossible.
It was clearly an untenable situation.
Sure.
We got tons of complaints. The GSEs got tons of complaints, and transactions just weren't getting done.
Right.
So it was completely counterproductive. So we sat down with FHFA, which is the regulator for Freddie and Fannie, and both of the GSEs, and we said, look, we've got to be on the same page. We've got to figure out what's most important about this program and find the middle ground.
Sure.
So the GSEs worked together to come up with their short sale alignment, which was announced, and I think it took effect in the summer, last summer. No, I think it was September.
It was this year, right?
Yes, it was. Anyway, it was only a few months ago.
Sure.
when it finally took effect, and as a result of that, the GSEs adopted all of the points that Treasury felt were most important for a short sale, such as release of borrower liability.
Sure. So no deficiency judgment.
No deficiency judgments.
Right. No dual tracking.
No dual tracking.
One point of contact.
One point of contact. Caps on the subordinate lien payoffs, and those kinds of things that and simplified documentation. So those things that we felt were most important, the GSE said, okay, we will adopt those and we'll call them HAFA. But we need Treasury to meet us part way. We need Treasury to make the documentation even simpler and to conform to some of the changes that we've made, which we think are improvements to the program. So we looked at those and we were able to get to a place where truly now there is a single short sale program for borrowers with a financial hardship.
And let's make this clear, for borrowers with a financial hardship, there is a single program starting February 1st.
That's correct.
So this is not all going to be in place today. We've got a couple months, right? So or a month and a half, February 1st. So let's start with this first slide here and explain it. So before February 1, 2013, we had a lot of paperwork, and now, so we went from the short sale agreement, which had to be unilaterally signed, or sorry, bilaterally signed. Now the short sale notice, this just gets mailed out to the borrower. It's one document, it goes out to the borrower. And then the acknowledgement of request for short sale, that again, that goes out to the borrower, right?
Right, so as you well know, we actually have two types of short sales. And HAFA really pioneered this concept of pre-approved short sales.
Right.
And I've said on your broadcasts before that any agent that is listing a property that they know is underwater absolutely needs to contact the servicer and work with the servicer.
Immediately.
Immediately.
Yep.
Don't wait till you have a contract.
And you know what, let's make a point here. When we said that before, some servicers weren't ready for that yet, so they got a lot of phone calls and they didn't know what to do with something that didn't have a contract.
Right.
Today, at least the major servicers, the top 5 or 6, they're absolutely ready to talk to anybody who's underwater and listed.
And they recognize that this has huge value to them.
Right.
So
that's a salient point for every agent watching. Right. You list a property, it's underwater, there is financial distress, call immediately.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So that's the purpose of the short sale agreement. So what we said was that the borrower and the servicer would actually enter into a formal contract.
Right.
It says, borrower, if you do these things, we'll allow you to sell your house and we won't go to foreclosure and we won't do all that stuff. Well, the formal contract meant that a document had to go to the borrower had to review it and sign it and send it back, and nothing happened during that period of time.
If nobody was guiding that execution, sometimes it just didn't happen.
It just sort of died on the vine.
Right.
So now we have replaced that with a simple notice.
Sure.
All right. Now it has the same information in it, but it doesn't require the borrower to sign it and return it to the servicer. So that in and of itself saves at least 2 or 3 weeks.
And this is interesting. So just so everybody who's watching understands, this new short sale notice form, it's a 7-page with a cover letter. And essentially what it does, it's a unilateral contract, right? It's signed by the servicer.
That's right.
And they say, they kind of go through a lot of things that they're going to do. They let the borrower know what to do, but then they also go through, like you said, it'll be full satisfaction of mortgage. If the property doesn't sell, they'll adjust prices. They will postpone foreclosure, release subordinate liens. They'll report the taxes. They are going to have to report the taxes. There will be credit reporting. So, I mean, it's a unilateral contract. It gives the borrowers all the benefits. They don't lose anything here.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Great.
Perfect. So then,
right.
And then the acknowledgement of request for short sale form, same thing, right? We've just made it easier.
Right. So we used to have a document where if the borrower got a contract, the listing agent or the selling agent had to then find our form on the website, fill out our request for approval form, send it to the servicer. The servicer would then do something. The borrower had to sign it. I mean, it was a whole bunch of back and forth and time consuming.
But it was necessary at the time to get everybody to move together and work together, right?
The purpose of the request for approval form was really to provide all this same disclosure to the borrower that we did on the pre-approved short sale agreement.
Right.
Right? Because these are important things for the borrower to know. Yes, you're going to be released. We're going to help you pay off your subordinate liens. You know, here are the legitimate closing costs that will allow you to have. Here's the listing commission will allow. So the disclosures were important, but the problem was it was delaying execution.
Gotcha.
So now what can happen, much, much simpler, you get a contract on the property, you send the contract with supporting documentation such as, are there any junior liens, a pre-approval letter for the purchaser that they have a loan or indication it's a cash sale, whatever the information is. You send that to the servicer, and then the servicer has 10 days to acknowledge that receipt and provide all these disclosures.
Right.
Says, yep, we got it, we're working on it, we'll get you an approval. They have to now get an approval within 30 days.
Right, so we'll get to that in just a second. So here are the old forms. Again, on February 1st, these are optional. They're probably not going to be used. Understand the short sale agreement, the request for approval of short sale form, the alternative request for approval, or ARAS, and then the deed in lieu agreement form. They'll be gone February 1. In the next month, you'll probably still see them. And then the new forms will be this short sale notice. It's a notice only, doesn't need to be signed by the homeowner. And then servicers choosing not to use this short sale notice still have to communicate similar terms to the short sale to the borrower in writing, right? So we might not see this exact form, but for agents who really are interested, and I know a lot of the CDPs watching, the agents watching, anybody tuning into this broadcast is doing short sales, they may want to download it so they understand that there's a lot of protection for the borrower here.
Tons of protection. And what we've heard from most of our participating servicers is that they'll probably use our notice because it's just, they've already have it pre-programmed into their...
They might add a logo. They might add a phone number.
I'm sure they'll do that.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll put a phone number, a logo, but it's going to be almost identical.
Pretty much.
So let's take a look here. So if the short sale form, the servicer, in the short sale form, the servicer explains the following. So this is a short sale notice. They give them the borrower's responsibility, again, listing the property, property upkeep, partial mortgage payments, clear title, consent to share financial information. The servicer's responsibilities in a HAFA short sale are the following. Full satisfaction of mortgage. They will make price adjustments if the property doesn't sell. They will postpone the foreclosure so there's no dual tracking. Subordinate liens will be released and tax and credit reporting will be done, and they will approve the sale if it comes in at the parameters that they've allowed. Again, there's also some general information about the short sale program. It's a good summary, right, Lori?
Yes,
That's about it. And then here is the other form, the acknowledgement of request for short sale. And for those of you watching, I know, again, they can use their own form, but they're going to still have to acknowledge a request. Here's where you can get these, and let me take you through a progression here. We go to hmpadmin.com. The easiest place on this site to go is just scroll down to the bottom of the page, click on the HAFA, the link there, and then go to the Home Affordable Foreclosure Alternatives Program Overview. It's going to say Borrower Documents. We click through borrower documents, and they're at the very bottom of the page. They're the ones that are marked new for now, right?
Yep. Right.
Anybody can get those there, and if you're a CDP member, we will have those in our resource library and make sure that you get copies of those. So now let's move on to the next change, and you mentioned this already. Spoiler alert, Lori already talked about it. Big difference here is that the servicer is required before February 1st to respond within 45 days. You've been able to shave 15 days off of this, so give us a little insight into why this was done.
It was done for two reasons. First of all, since we're not requiring the borrower to send stuff back and forth anymore.
We buy that time.
Right? So we've bought some time, and we might as well put that time to good use. The other reason, quite honestly, is that it is when the Freddie and Fannie did their alignment, they require their servicers to respond to an offer in 30 days.
Yeah.
Well, if you can do it for Freddie and Fannie, you can probably do it for a PLS loan or an MBS loan. So that was our reason.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's just make a point, and we'll make it now. We'll probably state it several other times. HAFA, the HAFA program, the Freddie and Fannie programs, the requirement of 30 days, once you start requiring servicers to respond in 30 days, it's very likely they're going to do the same thing on non-government program loans as well, right?
I mean, we've seen huge improvement.
Massive.
And I mean, I have to say, of course, it's not, universal.
Sure.
There are always the cases
and
where that gets screwed up.
We're gonna hear about it on this call. On this broadcast. I guarantee. Hey, I've got one that's taken 6 months, but
on average,
right.
The time frames for approval, the time frames for closing short sales have gone. I mean, before we started, one of the big holdups was that a short sale, on average, was taking more than 12 months. I mean, in 2008, 2009, it was a zoo.
We actually did a survey in 2008, and I think the average closing time on a short sale was 14 months.
Yeah. So I think we're down to about 4 months.
Right.
So, that's a huge improvement. It's not where we want to be, but it's huge improvement, and, it's incremental. We're working towards that.
Sure, sure. So this is really moving that in that direction. So now let's talk about the hardship affidavit that has to be completed before closing. So before February 1st, an affidavit of borrower hardship required for approval of a HAFA short sale. After, a predetermined hardship is sufficient for approval, but the hardship affidavit is required to close. So let's talk about this predetermined hardship. There's some requirements, right?
Sure. Well, let me just back up and explain the affidavit itself.
Sure.
All right. So because this is a taxpayer-funded program, we have a mandate that we need to help borrowers who are at risk of foreclosure.
Right.
So this is not just for the person who's underwater and has a great job and has lots of money in the bank and just wants to get out.
The quote-unquote strategic default.
This is not a strategic default program. This is for people who truly cannot afford to continue making their mortgage payments or have been transferred to get the only job they could get after being unemployed for 6 months. Now they are transferred out of town and they really need to sell this house. So we have a hardship requirement. If you were trying to modify your loan and stay in the house, you've already filled out a hardship affidavit.
Right.
All right? So we have that on file. You don't need to do that again.
Right.
You only need one hardship affidavit.
But this is for the borrower that's done nothing yet.
Right. But the borrower who knew right away they couldn't stay in this house.
Right.
They
Or
just have to
they've
get out.
lived in the house, they've missed payments for 6 months, and they're calling for help.
That's right.
Right.
So, so now we have a predetermined hardship, which means if you have been delinquent for more than 90 days, and your
FICO, mortgage.
On your mortgage, yes, thank you. You've been delinquent on your mortgage for more than 90 days, and your FICO score is less than 620. We've just declared that to be a hardship.
Okay.
We know you got problems. We don't know what the problems are exactly, but we know you got problems. That is predetermined hardship. So the servicer can go ahead and either issue a short sale notice and say, yeah, go ahead and list your house, or they can accept your contract that you present to them and issue an acknowledgement of a short sale. Either one, without having to send you the affidavit,
right.
Have you fill out the affidavit, have you testify to the nature of your hardship, and send it in before they will even talk to you.
Right.
Right.
So now they can go all the way through the process of talking to you, approve you. You still have to sign an affidavit at the end, right?
That's correct. Now,
right.
If you're less than 90 days delinquent,
you have to do it
or
up
you
front.
have a relatively decent FICO score, then you have to send in the hardship affidavit and fill it out. Hardship affidavit for your listeners is also at HMP admin. And I
same place.
Same place.
Same place that we
just
showed.
If you know that's the character of your borrower, that they're only a couple months delinquent and they have relatively decent FICO, then have them sign that and send it with the contract, or have them sign that and send it with a request for a pre-approved short sale.
Perfect. I think we're going to take a real quick break, but before we go, I just want to let you know, when we come back, we're going to be talking about some points that are very important to me, very important to Lori, including some of the fraud and the issues that your clients could be caught up in without even trying, and heaven forbid, you may be caught up in. There are companies out there that are taking advantage of this situation. We certainly don't want to see that. Also, I want to let you know that our holiday sale is kicking off in conjunction with this broadcast. Love to see you become a CDP if you're not one. Lowest prices of the year. If you are a CDP, we're also featuring our advance. We have bonus materials that are going to be featured just with this broadcast. We'll talk more about that later. We'll be back in just a couple minutes with me, Alex Sharfin, and Lori Maggiano from Treasury. Hi, I'm Alex Sharfin, author of the CDPE designation, the fastest growing independent designation in the history of real estate. Certified distressed property experts nationwide have helped hundreds of thousands of homeowners who are in distressed situations, providing them, many of them, with a graceful exit to a challenging financial situation. We are the only designation that has been endorsed and received accolades by organizations like major lenders, major brokerages, and more.
I really truly do feel and believe that we are in a partnership. If we think it's anything different than that, we're not going to be as good as we can possibly be as an industry going forward.
We absolutely value your efforts, your knowledge. We have to make sure we're partnering up with you.
We have a very good association with Bank of America where we're now getting information as it goes out to the market, or maybe even a little bit before, so we can prep it for our agents.
Absolutely. We've seen agents that are educated, that understand how the short sale process works, they understand the market, are much more successful at closing short sales. So we're very supportive of these kind of designations and the support it does for our customers.
You know, Alex, Distressed Prosperity Institute, I think, has done a very nice job of creating a framework for realtors to work on short sales and giving them the tools to do that.
Over 35,000 agents have made the choice to become a certified distressed property expert. Are you ready?
I don't think there's anything better you can do for your career right now. Whether you want to stick to whatever's considered traditional real estate, I think short sales are now going to be part of traditional real estate or be traditional real estate.
I would say don't hesitate. Just get right over there and sign up for it. You will be able to help so many people.
If you are really wanting to advocate for your client, you cannot do it without tools.
I tell them do it right away. It's I've learned a lot. It's been very educational.
Don't hesitate, take it now. And if you can, take it yesterday.
Welcome back. Alex Sharfin here with Lori Maggiano from Treasury. We're going over the HAFA changes for February 1st, 2013. We've got a ton of information still left to share with you. Also, if you have any questions about becoming a CDP, joining our membership, call the number of your screen at 800-482-0335. We'd love to hear from you. Lori, we still have a few years left of people who are in distressed situation. There's still a ton of people who are underwater. What are your predictions for how this is going?
Well, the HAFA program, as you know, like all of the Making Home Affordable, sunsets at the end of December 2013.
Right.
But I think really the value of both HAFA and the HAMP modification program is that it sets standards for the industry.
Sure.
And, you know, I've probably said this to you before, but in 2008, a modification looked like capitalize and reinstate,
right,
and put borrowers back into a worse situation than they were before. Today, that has changed dramatically, and I think we're seeing the same thing with HAFA. Yeah. You know, short sales were very, very difficult to work with. There were no standards. It was sort of the wild, wild west out there. And now I think that we have some very positive standards for short sales. And what that means is even when HAMP and HAFA go away, the legacy of these programs lives on. In my mind, this is government doing what it should do and doing it well, which is setting standards and then letting the private sector take over.
And that's really where we are. And we, you know, you were a real estate agent. You've been in this industry for a while. We still have a few years left of helping homeowners through these types of situations, right? This is by no means over at the end of 2013.
It is not, absolutely not over, no.
Sure. So let's talk about, we'll come back to the hardship affidavit because I had a couple of questions for you. They come up from our members all the time.
Sure.
So now we know borrowers who are 90 days or more delinquent, have a FICO score of less than 620, are deemed to have a predetermined hardship. Now, you know, when we talk about this, Lori, let's show the hardship affidavit. Here it is. We get questions constantly about the military officer who has to move and is upside down on his property.
Right.
The police officer who has a security clearance. The person who works in software in telecom has a security clearance. The person who works for a company that does quarterly credit checks, and if you have a FICO score that goes down, severely, there's a challenge with your job position. There are people who are doing everything they can to stay in that home until it short sales, never go delinquent on a payment, but they do have a true hardship. They're still eligible, right?
They are. As a matter of fact, Making Home Affordable was really the first nationwide program of any type that recognized that borrowers who are responsible and trying to do the right thing, even in adverse circumstances, who've used up all their savings, who've borrowed against their IRA, who've done all of these things, deserve a break.
Yeah.
So you do not have to be delinquent. And so the predetermined hardship is for people that we can clearly see have a hardship because of delinquency and poor credit. But that doesn't mean that you have to be delinquent or have poor credit to get a short sale. As a matter of fact, one of the very specific examples we give of a hardship is a military family with a permanent change of station orders. So I'm in Coronado and I'm told I have to move to Washington, D.C.
And normally I could, but my house is now 20% upside down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is a hardship.
Yeah.
You still have to fill out the form and tell us about yourself, but absolutely that's a hardship, and we want to make sure that those folks get help.
Sure. Let's take a look at just the details of the hardship affidavit. So to put it in context for you, it is a simple form. It's only 3 pages. I have it here in front of me. We read through it today. It's actually one of the easier forms that I've seen to fill out from just about anything that we've seen before. So here's what they need to explain. The nature of hardship: is it a reduction in income, increased expenses, increased debt obligations, unemployment, depleted cash reserves? What exactly is the nature of that hardship? Then, desire to keep or sell property, and in most cases, Lori, people who are truly upside down, they have a situation, it's a hardship, we're looking at sell, right? There's some people who really do want to keep it, but in the situation you just described, I'm being relocated, I can't keep that property. Then whether the property is owner or tenant occupied, and now tenant occupied properties can be eligible,
That
right?
is true, yep.
And how many properties the owner owns in total, and then have they declared bankruptcy? And there's one last. If there's been a HAMP modification on the mortgage, so did they successfully get a mortgage modification? And if so, was it permanent or trial?
Right.
So let's just talk real quickly about the point that I just made. In the past and still nationally, there are a lot of real estate agents. In fact, unfortunately, there's some real estate trainers that are saying you just simply should never try and do a short sale on a tenant-occupied property, and you should never try and do a short sale on a property or a person who owns multiple properties. Both of those are false, right?
That's correct.
So tell us the truth.
Well, beginning in June of this year, part of our modification program was expanded to modify loans that have tenants or modify loans that are being put into rental service. So prior to that, we would only modify a loan for an owner-occupant.
Sure.
And we had an owner-occupancy requirement in the HAFA. But clearly, if we're going to modify somebody's loan when they have a tenant, we should be more than willing
to do a short sale
if there's a tenant.
Yeah,
And we will pay relocation incentives to the tenant if they have to move as a result of the
So see, that is key, and so many people don't understand this. That HAFA relocation incentive is available as a direct payment to the tenant to get them out of the property and allow the property to sell.
That's correct.
So this is a huge bargaining chip for, in the past, we all know this scenario, and I can paint it pretty vividly. Somebody's living in their house, they can't afford it, they can't afford the mortgage payment, they've lost their job, they move in with a friend, they rent their property, trying to keep it, trying to keep the payments up. They can't. Now they have a tenant-occupied property with a 1-year lease. There's 6 months left on it. They absolutely desperately need to do a short sale. And prior to these changes, it was very difficult.
Yes.
So now they can not only get the short sale, but that tenant can get some cash to move out of the property.
It is very likely that the tenant's not going to walk away from the last 6 months of their lease.
Just for a handshake.
Unless they get some help.
Right.
So the tenant is eligible for up to $3,000. It's really based upon the decision of the borrower.
Sure.
You know, the servicer's relationship is with the borrower, not with the tenant.
Right.
So the borrower has to negotiate with the tenant. The borrower has to you know, convince them that the $3,000 is worth moving for.
Right.
But I do want to be real clear. If the tenant is going to stay in the property after the short sale, say an investor purchased it because of the cash flow, then that tenant is not eligible for incentives because they don't have to move.
Right.
This is a relocation incentive.
Right, and it truly is to relocate.
That's right.
I think that kind of takes us into some of the discussion we're about to have. So let's go to this next one. So HAFA changes, again, the Supplemental Directive 1207, we're going through it a little bit further. Before February 1st, 2013, no arm's length transaction or HUD-1 affidavit was required. I applaud you. In this one, there is a new HAFA affidavit to be completed at closing. The buyer and seller must execute the HAFA affidavit. And Lori, this gets to kind of the nuts and bolts of some of what I'm very passionate about. Let's take a look at the affidavit here. It is a simple 2-page document, and here's what the buyer and seller must affirm. They have to agree that, 1, the short sale is an arm's length transaction. All agreements, understanding, or contracts or offer relating to the sale have been disclosed to the servicer. Unless disclosed to the servicer, no agreement exists that the seller will remain in the property as a tenant or later obtain title of the property. So 2 and 3 are almost the same. We're just saying it in 2 very strong ways. Neither party will receive funds or commissions from the sale except relocation assistance. It must be recorded on the HUD-1. And all amounts paid to anyone connected with the short sale reflected on the HUD-1. And the last one, after receiving relocation assistance, it's required that the property is vacated. Anyone who gets that money has to leave as a condition of sale. The seller also affirms that recipient of assistance occupies the property as their principal residence, so tenant or seller.
That's correct.
So I applaud this. I think that we've needed this for a while because there's just so many people who've been trying to game the system and take advantage of sellers, and really they've been telling them all kinds of stuff, right, Lori?
They have. Now, I do want to be clear that this is an affidavit that's signed at closing.
By both?
By both the buyer and the seller. And it is very, very similar to an affidavit that's required by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae.
It's almost identical, right?
It's pretty darn close. Actually, they require the agent to sell it and the title company to sign it and everybody else. So we drew the line at that. We thought that the buyer and seller were satisfactory. But one of the reasons, I mean, most of these disclosures were previously included in either the short sale agreement or the request for short sale that a borrower signed. So when we said the borrower doesn't have to sign that anymore, we took out the things in those documents that were most important to us.
Right.
And I personally think that by having the borrower and the buyer and the seller sign it at closing, it really reinforces these messages more than sort of getting lost in lots and lots of other paperwork that they signed, that only the seller signed earlier in the transaction. One of the things that has come up a lot lately, you mentioned it earlier, is this concept of an arm's length transaction.
Yeah.
So this is in the no policy good deed goes unpunished. Right?
Sure.
At some time in one of the many updates to HAFA, we included an option for servicers to work with legitimate housing nonprofit organizations.
So let's say that again. Legitimate housing nonprofit organizations.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Who have as their business model buying properties at short sale and then working with the borrower to improve their credit so that they can then repurchase those properties.
Right.
And the nonprofit housing organization and the borrower have an agreement up front. That's the plan. They have training involved.
It's
they have
disclosed
all
to the
kinds
servicer.
of
There's
servicer
classes.
knows it.
This is part of that neighborhood preservation.
Exactly.
It's part of keeping the right people in the right homes.
Right.
However,
but it's a very small program. I mean,
Sure.
there truly are very few nonprofits who are able to do this successfully.
Right.
And it requires a real partnership with the nonprofit and the servicer.
And there's dozens, not thousands.
Exactly,
Right.
yes. So we put this in there to accommodate those legitimate organizations.
Those
right?
very few.
Right, the very few. It has now been corrupted by people attempting to perpetrate fraud. And, you know, fraud is only limited to the creative mind of the criminal. So, you know, they see an opportunity and they jump right in. So we have, and I think you've brought several of these cases to our attention.
Anytime we see them, we bring them directly to Treasury and
we
to the
appreciate
prosecutors.
that.
Yeah.
We have a very robust investigation and prosecution.
A very passionate investigation and
we
prosecution.
Do. Yes, we do. So anyway, the latest short sale related fraud is an organization quickly getting their 501c3 designation or co-opting another completely unhousing related charity.
Yeah, what we've seen is they actually will just go and buy a charity that's been sitting dormant for 4 or 5 years so that it has a longer history than a brand new one. And then they turn it into suddenly this charity that's never had anything to do with anything. It maybe hasn't even been used. It's a shell charity. Now they're using it as a housing, quote unquote, not-for-profit.
So the one that comes immediately to my mind is an organization that goes to borrowers and says, we will buy your property at short sale and promise to sell it back to you. But in order for us to do that, you need to hire us to create a living trust for you.
Right.
And put the property in the living trust with us as the beneficiaries of the living trust.
Right.
And so the borrowers, in order to do this now, are asked to pay $1,500, $2,000 to have an attorney create this trust for them.
Which is a boilerplate Word document, right?
Right, but it doesn't matter because the objective is really to obtain title to the property as expeditiously and cheaply as possible.
Right.
And the likelihood that these borrowers are ever actually going to regain these properties appears slim and none to us.
Well, because with the illegitimate company, you don't have the training, you don't have the classes, you don't have the borrower protection, and you certainly don't have them trying to put the borrower in a better situation post-short sale.
No.
In fact, many times, they're trying to put the borrower in a situation post-short sale where they have to vacate the property.
So my strong message to your viewers is that servicers are absolutely not required to enter into any of these agreements.
Sure.
They choose to enter into some with legitimate organizations that they have long-term relationships with, but if somebody comes and says, look, it says in the HAFA guidance that you can do this, can is much different than must.
And the big red flag, and let's just make sure everybody understands it, if a borrower is told they have to pay legal fees, they have to make a donation. I've seen a lot where you make an initial donation and a post donation. If they have to pay for classes, if they have to pay for education, buy books, we've seen membership fees. Any of those things mean it's just not real.
It is absolutely prohibited in our program to charge the borrower or require the borrower to make any financial contribution as a condition of a short sale.
And I'd like to let any of our members who are watching know that if you're watching and you encounter one of these groups, you can send that information to us. You can make sure that anybody at our organization gets it. We will relay it to the investigation team at Treasury. We've done that several times already, and we are happy to do it again because in this type of a situation, Lori, it's maddening that someone who's already in danger of losing their house, now we're fleecing them for more money, or these organizations are fleecing them for more money, and then they go off and they end up worse off than when they began.
Well, one of the key objectives of HAFA to begin with was protecting borrowers
Without question.
From being required to make financial contributions in order to get rid of their house. So why we would allow this to happen in the name of a nonprofit, I just don't get.
Right, right. Unfortunately, there was a sentence in the guidance that made it so that it was easy to exploit. So let's take one more point and then we'll go to another quick break. So before February 1st, 2013, Treasury was contributing $2,000 to a subordinate lien payoff. Now it's $5,000. And whoops, let's go back one. So what this means is that Treasury will reimburse $2 of every $3 contributed up to $5,000. So we take that total lien payoff up to $8,500, right, Lori?
That's correct.
And why did you make this change?
We wanted to give investors even more incentive to negotiate with subordinate lien holders.
And so we also capped that subordinate lien payment, and it's in this, again, it's working.
It is.
So, and this is what it looks like. Let me just give everybody a quick equation. So, 8,500 is the cap. So let's look at a primary lien holder pays $6,000 to a junior lien to get it released and close the deal. Treasury would reimburse 2/3 of that, or $40,000. So primary pays $6,000 to the junior lien holder. The math looks something like this: 2/3 equals $4,000, and Treasury makes a payment back to that primary of $4,000. So that happens off of the HUD. We don't even see it. The borrower doesn't see it. That's something that they handle with you later on.
That's correct. Yep.
Perfect. Perfect. Let's take a quick break. We're coming back with some other changes, some that are incredibly important to a market that many of you serve, investors. In fact, in the past, it's been very challenging for investors to buy these properties. Well, that is all changing, and that's not the only thing we're coming back with. There's a lot more information, so don't go anywhere. Again, a reminder, our 2012 holiday sale is kicking off today in conjunction with this broadcast. Take a look at this quick video. Lori and I will be right back. Education's important. I know Lori believes it. I believe it. Take a look at the video. We look forward to seeing you in just a few moments. How much would it cost you to design, coordinate, and launch a full-scale print marketing campaign? With a corresponding website, professionally written blog entry, copy and paste email message, and customizable revise and release press release, even a handwritten note starter. All of this is just the beginning of what you receive as a CDPE Advanced member. That's right, every month, this complete marketing kit and website are updated with a new theme and new copy. We will also show you how to get the most out of your marketing materials and report breaking news to you through our monthly advanced coaching broadcasts. Advanced members are never alone. You also get access to the CDPE Advanced Member Forums. This means being connected to thousands of other advanced members for answers to tough questions. Agents aren't the only people you'll be directly connected to. With priority ranking on Find a CDPE at cdpe.com, homeowners and even lenders will find you faster and easier. We're so convinced the CDPE Advanced program will become a permanent part of your business that there's no commitment and no contract. For $149 to start and $99 a month, you'll get the tools, marketing materials, and support you need to move your business forward. Go to cdpe.com/advanced or call 800-482-0335 and get started today. That quick commercial break featured our Advanced program, one of the premier marketing programs where you can find more people who need your help. If you're a CDPE, you have a special program or a special deal right now, our lowest price of the year on the Advanced program, save a ton. And if you're not a CDPE, you can join our membership. In fact, Lori, last time we were together, I think we had about 32,000 members. We were about to graduate the 45,000th CDPE, making us the fastest growing designation in real estate history.
Well, congratulations. Excellent work.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lori. I think you've had a lot to do with that. You know, I kind of feel like we've grown up together doing this. You know, we were working together all the way back in 2008 before anybody even knew what a short sale was, and look how far we've come. Yeah. It's been amazing. So let's take a look at this next change. So before February 1st, 2013, there was no resale before 90 days. So if somebody bought a property, they could not resell it within 90 days. Well, today, resale is allowed after 30 days. However, between 31 and 90 days, the price cannot exceed 120% of the short sale price. So this opens up an investor market.
It sure does. Yep.
And that's the intention.
It is. I mean, this certainly follows along the portfolio sales of REO.
Sure.
And delinquent loan sales that are taking place at HUD right now. We want to make sure that that these properties stay in private hands and don't end up rolling to foreclosure and burgeoning servicer portfolios.
Sure.
So that whatever we can do to make that happen. The 90-day prohibition was really to prevent flipping.
Right.
Right.
Well, to prevent the immediate next day flip for no value.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. So we think that the 30-day prohibition, I mean, very few people are going to be able to turn a property in 30 days.
Sure.
Right. And so the combination of the 30-day prohibition and the longer prohibition on, excessive price is, I think, a good change.
Sure, and it opens up the rehab and resell, right? Not just the flip. You know, flips usually, a lot of people refer to people who rehab properties as flippers. Here we call them rehab and resell because when you buy a property, you put value into that property, you spend 3 months rehabbing it, and then you go to sell it, you can make more than 120% of the price because you've probably put 20 or 30% in just to the rehab. Prior to this change, investors were kind of locked out of the market because of the fact that if they bought that property and tried to resell it, they really couldn't. But it's almost like maybe there's some recognition that investors play a valuable role in this market.
I think there absolutely is, and I think that there are a lot of properties that sell that really just need some cosmetic work.
Sure.
So you can buy them and sell them for 120% of value, and you have a modest investment, and that's a really good and positive thing, and we want to encourage that.
Fantastic. So let's take a look at this, just go through a real quick summary. So here is before and after February 1st, 2013. So before we had all of those requirements, we've gone through them in detail. Now here's the important part. After February 1st, 2013, use of the short sale agreement and request for short sale approval documents are optional. We're now going to see that unilateral servicer notice. Servicers are required to respond within 30 days before they had 45. The predetermined hardship is there. If you don't have a predetermined hardship, you can use the short sale affidavit. The short sale affidavit is going to be required from everybody completed at closing. Treasury will now contribute up to $5,000, making the total payment to a subordinate lien $8,500, and resale is now allowed after 30 days. That kind of sums it up, right?
That's it.
So let's go ahead and let's take some questions. I think we have a few live people who have called in, but I want to take at least one emailed question. This is from my good friend Shar McCollum at Shar McCollum Real Estate in Olaf, Kansas. So the question is interesting, Lori, because it opens up kind of a confusion that a lot of agents and unfortunately a lot of accountants and tax professionals have. It says, does this pave the way for the borrowers to expect the 1099s to go as a taxable event after the February 1st date? Should they now expect to pay taxes on the deficiency? So I think what's happened here is we've been dealing with this for years. A lot of people have confused deficiency and cancellation of debt. So let's go ahead and explain the difference between the two.
Sure. So as far as the IRS is concerned, any time you are forgiven debt, you owe something and you're not required to repay it.
And let's make this clear. This is a credit card.
Doesn't matter.
This is a home loan. This is a car loan. This is anything that you are forgiven.
That's right. That is a taxable event.
Right.
Right?
You have income.
You have income. And if it is in the context of an institutional lender, whether it's a credit card or a car or a mortgage, the lender is required by law to send the IRS a 1099.
Which they have been doing for the last 5 years.
That's correct. Several years ago, Congress passed a Mortgage Debt Relief Act.
Right, 2007 it was originally passed. It's been renewed twice, and now it expires in about 13 or 14 days.
Something like that, yes.
Right.
So what that act did was it basically said for a limited number of homeowners who experience debt relief as a result of foreclosure or some other loss mitigation activity, and for whom the debt was the purchase money mortgage, not money that you took out after refinancing to go to Paris or to buy the boat, but truly to either purchase or rehabilitate your home, then that money would not be taxable. Still send the 1099, but you would be absolved from having to pay taxes. Now, you have to report it on your income tax.
Well, there's an offset, right? Just like you report expenses, you report income, you report expenses, there's a net. So in this one, you report the cancellation of debt. There's an offset with the cancellation of debt with the Mortgage Forgiveness Act. And then you report it, you report the offset, it's still on your taxes.
That's correct.
Right.
However, so what is likely, what will change unless Congress acts within the next few days, is that will no longer be a
There won't be an
waiver.
exception.
There will not be an exception for that. Now, there will still be an exception, and there always has been in IRS law, for borrowers who are insolvent.
Sure.
So there's a whole insolvency piece that most agents are not really aware of.
And unfortunately, a lot of tax professionals aren't as well.
That's true.
So this is a situation when we coach people on this all the time. If you're dealing with somebody who is losing their property and they have gone through a short sale and there's cancellation of debt and they were an investor or they took a lot of money out of that property, you really need to see a tax professional that understands these regulations in order to report correctly.
That's correct.
So, and it's dangerous, right? If it's
I'm not sure what
reported
you mean by danger.
incorrectly.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, you know, you're misrepresenting your taxes if
Right.
you report it incorrectly.
Right.
May not be doing it on purpose, but you certainly are. But I do want to say that the administration is absolutely committed to trying to work with Congress to get the Mortgage Debt Relief Act extended. Treasury is very involved in the discussions, but it does require legislation, and
Sure.
Congress has to act. And as we all know, they're really focused at the moment on resolving the fiscal cliff, and it's sort of subsumed all the oxygen in Washington right now. So we haven't given up hope. We are still hopeful that Congress will act. It has widespread support on both sides of the aisle, so it's not like people don't want to do this.
Right.
They just haven't quite fit it into the agenda.
Well, we can look back to 2007 when the Mortgage Forgiveness Debt Relief Act, originally known as H.R. 3648, was originally passed. It was passed mid-year, but it was retroactive
yes.
to January 1. So for everybody who's watching, it's possible, but is no guarantee, but highly, highly possible, and I would say even probable, that it'll be passed sometime in 2013, retroactive to January 1, so that we cover everybody who had an issue, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of what we believe is going to happen. You know, I don't think that there's anybody, any legislator anywhere that wants to return to his constituents and have the newspaper article about the family that lost their home and now is suffering with a huge tax bill they can't afford.
As a representative of the Treasury, I can't make statements on behalf of the Congress, but we're certainly hopeful that that will happen.
Right. As a representative of our organization, I
can
make
say whatever you want.
Yeah. So I have a little bit more freedom there. So this is an interesting question. This is from Ron Ned. I think it's Ned. Sorry if I said it wrong, Ron. He's at Charles Rutenberg Realty in Plainview, New York. He says, I noticed that one of the borrower requirements noted in the new short sale notice was partial mortgage payments. This is not a requirement. This is just an explanation of what happens with them, right?
Right. So from the beginning of the program in 2009, we made it possible for servicers to negotiate with borrowers to make partial mortgage payments during an extended short sale marketing period.
Sure.
Right? And so servicers had that right. We capped it at 31% of borrowers' gross monthly income so that they weren't being gouged. But most servicers really didn't take advantage of that.
But we haven't taken it out.
Right. No, well, the line in there is, Ron will see that it says, if applicable.
Right.
So if the servicer is collecting partial mortgage payments from a borrower, they would include that in the notice. If they're not, then they exclude it from the notice. And there are several provisions in there that are only included if they're applicable.
Perfect. Let's take a live caller. It looks like Maureen in Ozone Park. She has an interesting question, Lori. It's one that comes up all the time. Let's go ahead and take Maureen live. Maureen, are you there?
Can you hear me?
We can. So, Maureen, you have a question about one of your short sale listings. You want to get involved, don't you?
Well, no, I don't have a question about one of my listings, but what I am questioning is if I come upon one where I am the listing agent and it's something I would like to purchase, how does that affect the requirements of an arm's length transaction? In the regular real estate environment, if I'm the listing agent on a property, I certainly am able to buy it as long as I disclose that I am a realtor.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Maureen. So, Lori, we get this all the time. The agent wants to get involved. They see a deal. They have a short sale that they've listed. They want to buy it. Now, from everything we've heard from servicers, whether it's a HAFA short sale or not, regardless of how it works, they're not allowing it. Maureen wants to know, why is that an issue with the arm's length transaction requirement?
So Maureen, to purchase your own listing, when you have been involved in creating the value, or at least influencing the value, when you have the ability to show it to other individuals or not show it to other individuals and sort of can control the flow. Servicers find that to be
it's like undue influence, right?
Undue influence over the transaction.
Right.
So for that reason, that they have prohibited it. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't buy any other short sale. You can certainly buy another short sale, just not one that you have listed.
Right. So if an agent wants to go get a deal, they can go buy anybody else's short sale. But when you're involved, and I think that one of the things to point out to Maureen too, and you know, we're well versed in this because we get the question all the time, is that in a normal transaction, it's just that, it's a normal transaction. The borrower is not in distress. They are not open to undue influence. Most of the time, there's market forces that are at play. And in a short sale transaction, really everything's stood on its head. The property, many times there's problems with it, there's issues with it. That realtor, that agent really has a fiduciary duty to that borrower. And if they turn around and try and buy it, they're jeopardizing a lot of that.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
The other question that we get frequently along those lines is, if you are a real estate agent and involved in a short sale on your own property,
right,
why can't you get a commission?
Sure, same reason.
Yeah, well, and basically because, you know, the servicer is giving up, the investor is giving up a lot to work with you. And they're already providing a relocation incentive, and as an agent, you could get the relocation incentive. But to pay yourself for selling your own property when you're the one holding the debt, is the servicers just will not countenance that.
Perfect. Let's take another call here. We have Courtney in Columbus, Ohio. She's on line 6. Let's go ahead. Courtney, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Courtney. You have a question about buyer representation?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Basically, as I've been listening, this has a little bit to do with what you just were talking about.
Okay.
So was your question already answered, Courtney?
It's not that. There's just, I can hear a lot of feedback.
We hear you loud and clear, so just go ahead and give us a question, and then we'll answer it.
My question is there a benefit to a buyer's rep learning about this so that they can help their buyers purchase a distressed property as opposed to a seller's rep? Because it seems to me that if you were representing a seller, it makes sense to know about how to go through this process for the client. But if you're a buyer's rep, is it a conflict of interest?
You know, that's an incredibly good question.
Yeah, it really is.
So one of the reasons that we created HAFA in the first place is that we heard from real estate agents that they went through 3 or 4 buyers before they finally got the bank to come to the table and approve a deal.
Yeah.
So if I were representing a buyer, I would absolutely want to know
everything.
What the rules are,
yeah,
who's making the decisions, what the time frames are. So getting trained on how short sales work, I think, would be incredibly valuable for buyers' representatives.
Yeah, no question. You know, I would say probably about 1/5 to 1/4 of our members, so about 10,000, 12,000 agents out there, are buyers' representatives, and they've gotten the designation, they've gotten the information, because when they're on the other side of the table, one of the most important things, knowing everything, is that if you understand the process, you're going to know if that listing agent doesn't. And that's critical, right? Both agents really need to understand the process. But if somebody's listed a short sale and they don't understand what they're doing, that seller's in trouble, right?
Not only that, with our new HAFA affidavit, the buyer has to sign that affidavit.
Right.
So being the buyer's representative and being able to explain to them what this means to them, what they're really agreeing to, and the fact that if they don't sign it, the deal's over.
Right.
I think is really valuable.
Right. Yeah. Education will not hurt you in today's market. So let's take a look. Bob has a question in San Antonio, line 7. Bob, are you there?
Yes.
So, Bob, you have a question about the tenant-occupied incentives. Let's hear it.
Yes, I am.
So if you can turn down the volume on your computer, you will hear us much better, Bob.
When would the tenant be eligible to receive it?
So when is the tenant eligible to receive the relocation assistance?
So just like an owner-occupant, the tenant would receive that assistance at closing.
Okay.
Or, assuming the tenant was moving, at or near closing.
Okay.
So if the tenant is going to stay on, then the money would stay with the title agent, and the title agent would issue the check to the tenant after they vacated the property.
Right. So really, one of the requirements for that relocation assistance, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a owner or a tenant, whoever's occupying the property, is you have to leave.
You got to get out.
Right.
That's right.
So it's similar to cash for keys in an REO.
That's
only
correct.
we reversed it. We said, hey, why do we have to wait for the REO?
And understand, this is the servicer's money,
Right.
and the servicer doesn't want to pay it unless they're sure that the occupant is really leaving.
Perfect. Let's go to line 2. We have Keith in Goodyear, Arizona. Keith, thanks for joining us. So, question about guidelines and requirements. And, Keith, I think I probably know where you're getting at is, we've heard a lot before that there's requirements, but is this really going to happen, right, Keith?
That's exactly right. And by the way, Q4 was phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So often we'll be talking to the loan servicers and we'll quote, the scripture and the verse and everything else, and they say, no, that's just a guideline. We don't really have to do that. So we hear that all the time. I just wonder if this is going to have any more teeth in it than what we've had in the past.
So, Lori, it's an interesting question. It's something you and I run into all the time.
That's right, yeah. So unlike the modification program, which is absolutely required, that's what servicers originally signed up for, and they have to do it, chapter and verse. The short sale program has much more of a voluntary component to it. Every servicer is required to evaluate a borrower for a short sale, and if they're eligible, to make that offer and extend that offer to them. But they don't have to follow every ramification of our policy. But what they do have to do is they have to tell you what their policy is.
Right. Well,
so
and
we
there's
have
certain things that they do have to follow, right? Like, it is hard and fast that there is no dual tracking.
Right.
Right? And they as an example, they can't go down the road on a short sale and then foreclose in the middle of that process, or they really aren't supposed to. That's something that they've agreed to.
That's correct. So we require every servicer to publish what we call a HAFA matrix.
Sure.
And the HAFA matrix says, here's the stuff we're going to do. And it has to be on their website. And you can get to it from our website, which is www.makinghomeaffordable.gov. And then there is a link to finding your servicer, and that will take you to their website. And the HAFA matrices are published there. And it says, here's exactly what you can expect from us. And it goes into really great detail, Alex, about if I disagree with the property value, how do I get the property value adjusted?
Right.
So it explains each servicer's requirements for property value. And some servicers have some additional limiting factors with short sales. For example, we will not enter into any short sale agreement with someone who's 30 days away from a foreclosure sale.
Sure.
We're just not going to start this process if the foreclosure sale is 30 days. If they have that requirement, they've got to tell you in their short sale matrix. Now, if you get to a point where servicers are not being responsive,
and they're not complying with their own matrix.
And they're not complying with their matrix, and they're not complying with our program, and you don't know what to do, we do have an escalation process.
Sure.
And it is used all the time by realtors, and I've gotten some fabulous feedback from realtors on how effective it's been. So I encourage your folks to do that, and it's basically escalations at hmpadmin.com. I'll say.
And I'll tell you, Lori, I'm not going to guarantee to everybody that this happens, but just so that the people who are listening and watching understand, not only have we had phenomenal feedback from our members, but we have heard up to and including that they emailed escalations at hmpadmin.gov, and at some point,
.com,
hmpadmin.com, and they have, at some point in the process, heard from you or heard from somebody senior within Treasury who really is driving that short sale to close. There's a lot of you who are very committed to this, working nights and weekends to make sure every borrower is served in the best way they can, right?
So the escalations at hmpadmin.com goes to a group of employees who are paid by Treasury. They actually work for Fannie Mae, but they're paid by the US Treasury, and they are specifically trained in how to resolve making home affordable issues. They contact the servicer on behalf of the borrower or the borrower advocate, in your case, realtors. And if they can't work something out with the servicer, if the servicer says, no, I'm not going to do it, and they believe there's been a violation of our policy, they will escalate it to my office. So they do get to me. Now, most of the time, the escalations folks have great relationships with the servicers.
And it gets fixed?
Once it gets escalated, it gets fixed. But every once in a while, we have some errant issue, and it comes to us, and then we take care of it.
Yeah, one of our members, Chris, who does a ton of short sales, he will occasionally forward me an email that he's gotten from somebody at Treasury and say, look how responsive they are and look how amazing this is. He might be one of the biggest users of escalations at hmpadmin.com. So let's go ahead and take a couple more questions. We've got a ton, and I want to get to as many as we can. Let's go ahead with line 6, Rosa. She has a question about one of the issues that so many agents deal with. They are working with a servicer, and then all of a sudden, they need to work with someone else. Rosa.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, thanks for being on the broadcast. Can you kind of spell out your question for us? I think you have a pretty common issue.
Okay, my question is lately, for some reason, the servicer is selling or handing the loan to a different servicer, and sometimes you may have a HAFA short sale, and they don't call the realtor, the listing agent, to let them know. I think it's very unfair. It's unfair for all parties because, you know, you could fall into foreclosure. It leads to a lot of problems. It takes a lot longer.
Yeah, you're right, Rosa. So, Lori, what do we do? What in that specific situation can be done?
So there is really nothing that nothing that can be done. Don't take me wrong. I mean, there's nothing that would prevent a servicer from selling a portfolio of loans.
Right.
And in that portfolio, they don't go and say we're going to sell only the short sales or we're going to sell only the delinquent loans. They select portfolios by a variety of characteristics, and it sometimes will include a loan that's in the process of a short sale. Those transfers of servicing have to be done in conjunction with our guidance, and our guidance is very clear that the borrower in the short sale context or in the modification context, if you've been in a trial modification and your loan gets transferred, those transfers, all of that activity has to transfer to the new servicer, and the new servicer needs to honor that relationship. And we have lots of documentation about what kinds of documentation needs to be transferred, how quickly it needs to be transferred, how responsive people need to be. I hear a lot that this is a problem.
Sure.
And the reason is because we're seeing huge portfolios being traded.
Right.
At the moment.
And we really can't stop that trading of portfolios because it's a function of how the market works.
It's not only a function of how the market works, but you know, regulators, financial regulators and banking regulators set sort of standards for safety and soundness.
Sure.
And say to servicers, you need to get to a portfolio size that looks like this.
Right.
You
and
need
so
to
have to sell them.
You need to have certain reserves.
Yeah.
So if to meet those reserve requirements, they have to sell certain portions of their portfolio. So we're seeing a lot more transfers, which is why it's coming up. But I just asked our call center folks at the escalations the other day if transfers of servicing was a major issue for them, if it was something that they were hearing a lot, because I hear it a lot, but then I only get the really bad cases, as you know. And they said, no, actually it's not. And it's one of the issues they can solve most easily, because the guidance is very, very clear.
So clear answer. Let's get that to escalations at hmpadmin.com as quick as we can.
Exactly.
Awesome. Let's take one more question, and this is one we get all the time. This is Joy. She's not a CDP member, but Joy, thanks for joining us on the broadcast. She's on line 3. So you had a HAFA short sale with a major servicer. Tell us what happened. Joy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
I work with Century 21 in Bayville, New Jersey, and I have a question. When is it? Every time I talk to either Bank of America or one of the servicers, they always say they have to wait for the investor to make the decision.
Sure, Joy. This is a common issue. So, Lori, you know, Bank of America is the largest servicer, mortgage portfolio servicer, right? So we hear Bank of America all the time, but I can tell you that in my travels and discussions with agents, I hear Bank of America just as often as Citi, just as often as Chase, Wells Fargo, and I could go down the line. There's probably 10 other names that normally come up where I'm trying to do a short sale and they say I have to wait for the investor. There's actually a very valid reason for this, right?
Probably the most likely reason is that the investor is Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac.
Right.
So that accounts for more than 50% of the portfolio.
Right.
So that's most of the time that's the investor. In this new HAFA realignment that they have done and that we are, you know, joining them on, a lot of decision making is being delegated to servicers more than was before.
Right.
So hopefully some of that clutter will clear out. But in addition to but there are certain things that the GSEs have not delegated and that do have to go back to a Fannie or Freddie representative. And so if you get stuck in that, I mean, when you hear, I'm waiting for the investor, always ask who the investor is.
Right.
First and best question. If it's Fannie or Freddie, at least you know where to go. So you have 1-800-FANNIE or 1-800-7-FREDDIE, and they will direct you to their short sale teams that make these decisions. But there are private label investors as well. Most of the time, the loans that are in mortgage-backed securities, the servicer has absolutely delegated authority. You know, they don't go to any of the mortgage-backed securities. There are 20,000 investors in those securities.
Sure.
You don't go and ask each one of the 20,000, what do I do now? But they do service for some, you know, individual investors or small groups of investors.
Or small institutional investors,
institutions.
Charities, pension funds, those types of organizations. And oftentimes, there really is a true delay.
Yes.
Right.
So, but again, first thing you should always do is ask who the investor is. Most of the time, it's going to be Fannie or Freddie, and in which case, you can at least know what the rules are and go right to the source if you need to.
And hopefully a lot of that has been resolved.
We hope so. They hope so too.
So Lori, we have run 15 minutes over, but I think that there's been so much information it was worth holding you, and I hope that's okay.
Oh no, I'm delighted to be here.
I want to thank you for being here again with us, Lori. It's always such a pleasure to see you.
Thank you very much.
So for those of you who are watching, there's a ton of changes coming next year, and what I want you to see is that while we still have several years, possibly as many as 4 or 5 years left, and about 3 million homeowners who are in some type of distress or could be exposed to a foreclosure, we can help bring that number down. We can work diligently to work with homeowners who need solutions and make sure that they don't end up in foreclosure, neighborhoods don't end up with a blight, and we don't have property values go down any more than they absolutely have to. In many areas, you are seeing inventory constraint. You heard me right. In areas where just a year and a half ago we had so much inventory we didn't know what we were going to do with it, today there's not enough. Well, we have a solution for you. The fastest way for you as a real estate professional to go out and help homeowners is also the best way for you to generate almost immediate income. List short sales, work with homeowners in distress. You are now, that so many people have been involved for the past 4 years pushing this uphill, we're now on the downhill. It's gotten easier. The government is involved. Lori's involved. She's a passionate advocate for you. And the new HAFA regulations have changed and made it even easier. Again, if you are a CDP, I want to thank you for being one of our members. And if you're not, consider becoming a member today. Our holiday sale kicks off right now. We have the lowest prices on our products that we've had all year. It's the best deal we've had. Check your inbox for more. I want to thank you for being on this broadcast and thank all of you for helping us solve America's foreclosure crisis, one homeowner at a time.